Springs Radio Real Estate Show. I'm Cheryl Garlock with Colorado Front Range Properties. So glad you could join us today. My very special guest is Daryl Harrison with Stewart Title. And welcome to the show, Daryl.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm glad. You know, we were just talking about the rental market, or the housing market in general here. And we're talking about people, you know, sometimes procrastinating.
Right.
I have a saying for you guys. You cannot rent your way to success. In order to succeed, you have to own. And let me tell you, that is ever so true. History does show that. So, you know, my daughter is a prime example of that there, because they had to let a house go, and over 2 years, in the same 2 years where the market picked up that steam, this was up in Denver, they could have made $39,000 sleeping in something.
Right.
$39,000. And you're in your 30-something, right there, early 30s or late 20s. That's pretty good money.
That's nice.
I'll take it. I wish I'd gotten that earlier when I was young like that. But anyway, get started while you can get started. Now, you guys, I have an announcement here. We are moving the show. We're moving the show format and location. We're going to start doing podcasts. This is going to be allowing us to go ahead and zero in on more explanation, more detail about the topics you want to hear. I want to know what topics you would like to hear more information about. All you got to go ahead and do is call me, 719-321-7600, or go to ColoradoSpringsBestHomes.com, drop me an email. Our contact information is right there. But beginning in early October, we're going to shift over to the podcast arena, you might say there. We're going to be moving the show to the iTunes directory. You can find us on YouTube. Just put in Springs Radio Real Estate, or just go to ColoradoSpringsBestHomes.com. You'll catch all the shows right there that we have now and going forward. So we want to hear from you. Tell us what you would like to know more about there, so we'll give you more focused information. Now, Daryl, let's talk a little bit about title insurance in the real estate world.
Excellent.
Yeah, it is. You know, because a lot of times, you know, consumers, they don't really know about title insurance. And I have a thing about understanding the major players in the real estate world and the transaction. Did you guys know you cannot really close a deal at all without title being involved? They're the most important party, because you know why? They convey the deed, the piece of paper that says you own something. And let's tell them how that works, Daryl.
Absolutely. Not only are we, recording the deed, so to speak, that we do a title search to begin the process.
And that's going to be really important, especially these days, because, you know, when people default on their wonderful debts that they have, well, a good person actually goes ahead and files liens against any property that they own.
Well, in the state of Colorado, they don't even have to file a lien on the property. If they have a judgment against a creditor and they own property,
yeah,
by default, that attaches to the property.
Oh, wow. So they can avoid a second step there.
Absolutely.
It just automatically does default and falls against the property.
Yeah, they will have foreclosure rights, on a property that they have a judgment against a creditor who owns that property.
Right, so that's true. So it means that the judgmentor, or the creditor, okay,
right,
it's really would have rights to go ahead and conduct a foreclosure. That means, but they're in somewhat of a succession. They have to cure whatever the other liens are ahead of them.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because when they come to the title insurance company to handle a transaction, not only do we look for a legitimate property description that lays out the property lines, easements, etc. We're going to look at what liens are filed against the property, but that we also then have to do a search against the individuals that own the property, and make sure that there's no outstanding judgments and so forth against the person.
You know, there's another thing about title insurance too, because we're talking right now here about the property owner.
Correct.
Okay, but you also do a name search, don't you, where buyers are concerned sometimes, and that can show up on a title commitment?
We do. We do a name search on a buyer if there's a lender.
If there's a lender.
On a cash deal, we're not concerned about that.
Right,
because if there's a lender, any judgments against that buyer will become of record, because we're a date and time priority state. Any judgment against the buyer will have a priority to the lender's deed of trust. and we need to address that.
Okay, that's a good point too, because actually our real estate contracts, the way they're written, they talk about the buyer's protection against the seller's title work there as far as liens and things like that are concerned. It doesn't really do a good job of the flip side. And that's important to look at there, because you need to be paying attention to what kinds of judgments, if there are any, against a buyer. You kind of figure that a would-be buyer wouldn't be buying a home if they got judgments. But you'd be so surprised how many people think that they don't find out, what their past history is. And it is.
Not all judgments get put onto the credit report, so the lender may not even have an idea that judgment is even outstanding.
Exactly there. So, when you're the seller of the property, in as much as it's important for the buyer to go ahead and look at the title history, make sure they get free and clear title to the property, subject only to their own loan. That's really all that they want there. Okay, but it's also important for the seller to make sure that the buyer doesn't have any judgments against them that surface up on the title documents either. And because that can stall a closing.
It can stall it, absolutely. We have to put together a very large effort to clear same name claims that are out there.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of effort that gets put in behind the scenes in creating this title search and a commitment to issue a policy.
Now, speaking of names, Daryl, in fact, I have a client I was just talking to last night about this. I said, well, so how do you want to take your title? And they're first-time home buyers. Well, I don't know. What do you mean? What's your name? And you go, Chris. Okay, well, is it Chris? Christopher? What? And so if you have a common name like Smith, okay, do you use your, I usually try to tell people, do what you got on your driver's license, generally speaking there. But do you do, say, Christopher Allen Smith, or Christopher A. Smith, or Chris Smith, or Christopher Smith? It's important. Can we address this?
Yeah, I mean, the more information that we have to help us, the better. I mean, so a middle initial is definitely helps when it comes to looking at the judgments that are filed against common names.
Exactly, especially common names there, because when you do have those judgments that come up there, they play kind of a matching system, so to speak, and you have to get an affidavit from the buyer that's not them, but then they have to prove it. Your good word is not quite good enough, guys. This is a document covered paper world, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And we hope that most people have patience and understanding with us, and knowing that a lot of these liens do not apply to the particular buyer or seller.
Right.
But we have to go through the research in order to make sure that that's the case.
And they do. And you know why, you guys? Because they insure it. They absolutely insure it. Daryl, what's the phone number everyone can call you at if they have questions?
719-578-1100.
I cannot recommend Daryl and Stewart Title enough. They do an excellent job. So give me a call, 719-321-7600, and we'll talk to you more about what you need to know when you're buying real estate. Now stay tuned for more from the Springs Radio Real Estate Show. We've got Property Showcase. We'll be right back.